Hello, hello, and welcome to the latest Enki Jazz podcast, where I am chatting to the incredible saxophonist Mike Chillingworth. As you'll see through the podcast, as well as all the stuff we get to talk about, Mike has also recorded some incredible music that is fundraising for some very good causes, and you'll find the links down in the description below, so please go and check those out. While you're checking those out, you'll also find the link to our Patreon page. Please do head over there and check out all the things we have in store for you. We've got a whole range of concerts, silent films with improvised soundtracks, and of course the rest of our podcast series. In our concert, you will find a set by the pianist Ivo Neem, who is in Mike's band, and also a set of curated gig footage from Ant Law's quintet, which features Mike as well. So please do go and check those things out. Sit back and enjoy the podcast. See you in a bit. Hello, Mike Chillingworth, and welcome to the Enki Jazz podcast. How have you been keeping these last strange 5 months or so?
Hello. Good to thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
I've been all right. I've been actually kind of fairly busy recently. I've just recorded a new album in the last few days,
Brilliant.
last week or so, which is obviously just been recorded, so it's quite a long way from release yet. But that's been keeping me very occupied for the last couple of months, and been doing some teaching and things like that. So it's felt fairly busy actually, even though I've not been within a long distance of my house for quite a long time. But
Fantastic. The stuff for the new album, was that things that had been written well before lockdown? That was part of what was going to be your tour this summer?
For the most part, yeah, it was music that I've been writing for the last I started on this project kind of roughly about this time 2 years ago. And we had I put this band together with Ivo Neem, John Scott, and Tom Farmer. And we did a few gigs up until I think the last one we did was around about Christmas at the Concella Bar, and we've been playing this music in. And then obviously we haven't been able to do anything for a long time, and I was in the middle of trying to put a tour together, which is I'd still love to do at some point, but we'll see. And so then I guess this all happened, and I just thought, well, I've got all this music. I've written a few new things as well with the recording in mind, and just trying to there was a particular core of pieces which I focused on for this band, which were the I suppose represent the kind of concept that I had in mind for this band, and so I tried to write a few other pieces in the same sort of vein or the same sort of world, so we could put together hopefully what might sound like a sort of cohesive album. So there's a few new ones, but there's a lot of old ones, and well, they're not, I wouldn't say they're that old actually, but I've wanted to get them recorded for a long time, so it's been great to finally get that nailed down and have the time actually over the summer, because even though I've been teaching quite a lot, but obviously people who teach, there's a bit of a summer hiatus, so the last couple of months have been fully down the rabbit hole working on these compositions and
Brilliant.
all this kind of stuff, which it's been really good to do, especially considering
Sorry Mike, I was just wondering, was the album recording a plan that you already had, or was that were you spurred on to do that because of the situation?
Well, I definitely wanted to do something all along, but just logistically I didn't have any idea how we were going to do that, but yeah, it just seemed like a good time to do it, really, because some of the band were less busy than usual, so some of the people who I play with, who are very difficult to pin down because they're doing so much stuff, they've actually got a lot more time on their hands, so it felt like a good time to do something like that, and I managed to scrape together the funds to do it somehow miraculously. So it was something I wanted to do eventually, but I wasn't expecting to do it this year, to be honest with you. But it was a bit of a last minute decision. I think I didn't really book the studio and all that stuff until sort of July sometime. And I just thought, okay, let's just go for it. Sometimes you just have to just take a leap and go for it. So I'm really glad that we did. And I'm pretty happy with the results of what I've heard so far, although I haven't been, we only did it a few days ago, so I'm keeping it at a slight distance at the moment, and I'll come back to it in a couple of weeks' time. But
can't wait to check it out when it's out and about. That'll be brilliant.
Yeah.
So listen, let's jump back before we run forward. So, how and why are you a jazz musician? What what got you into all this in the first place?
Well, I suppose, well, I can't, my parents are both musicians. They're not jazz
Okay.
musicians, but they're both classical musicians. And there's a lot of other musicians in my family. My mum's, my grandpa on my mum's side, he's also a kind of musician and musicologist as well. And his dad was also a musician, he was an organist. And so there's a lot of musicians in my family, and kind of a lot of music all around when I was growing up. And no, there's no one else who was into jazz at all. That was me, only me. But yeah, I got into jazz. I suppose when I was at school, I went to school in Watford, where I live now, actually. But there was a teacher at my school, a drum teacher. I had drum lessons very briefly. I never took it very far, but I had a few drum lessons, and I had drum lessons with this teacher. And he had a jazz group after school that I joined, and there was actually, he's kind of had a few pupils over the years who've gone on to be, in the profession. I think he's someone who drops all these names in all the time, so I'm not sure how exactly what his association is with all of these people, but I think he, people like Martin Speak was in one of his groups when he was growing up, and like Andy Panay, Ralph Salmins, and like all these kind of quite big names, that he's kind of, through his education work at one time or another, kind of had in these jazz groups that he ran with kids and stuff. So he happened to be working at my school, and I was in a group with him, and there was a couple of other people in that group as well who've also went on to music college and studies and stuff. So yeah, he just kind of one of those people who just was so enthusiastic about the music and just loved to play and loved to, talk about jazz, and, gave us things to listen to, tapes to listen to and things like that. And yeah, I guess I just played in that group when I was at school and just thought, well, it was a really fun way to make music, and a really kind of free and it just appealed to me, the kind of informal nature of it, and how you could just really, you didn't have to do an enormous amount of preparation. You just kind of turn up with your instrument and blow, but this music would happen, just magically on the bandstand. And he used to get us gigs, he'd go out and play, and nothing very prestigious or anything, but we'd go out and play in like old people's home or something like that, just these little gigs, which is great when you're that age. I'm talking about kind of when I was about sort of 15 or 16, really, just getting those experiences. And I just got the bug from that. And there was another person who was in that group called Andy Chapman, who was I studied at Guildhall, and he went to Guildhall a year before I did, and he was also in that group and went to school with me. He's still a musician, I think, but he's moved out of London. I'm not exactly sure what he's doing now, but he's a great drummer. So yeah, he just kind of, I guess because I saw him taking that path to music college and studying jazz in a serious way, I kind of saw him do that and thought, well, yeah, I could do that as well. And exactly, yeah. And I went and had a play at college when he was there in his first year, when I was still at school, I guess, and met a few people, and he showed me around a bit. And yeah, I just kind of, it just seemed like the right thing to do. I think I always knew I was going to do something musical, but I didn't really know what until that came along. But yeah, it just seemed to fit my kind of natural approach to music. I was never one for doing huge amounts of, learning a huge long piece or doing massive amounts of preparation. I always just wanted to play. When I was a teenager, I used to play in, as well as doing that kind of thing, I used to play in like just bands with my friends and pick up a guitar or sit behind the drums. I didn't know what I was doing, but like it was I just wanted to just get stuck in and make music, not sort of not have to sort of do too much formal study, although that did come later when I got really seriously into jazz, because you can't avoid it at some point. But
yeah, and then so obviously you're an in-demand person as a sideman. You play with lots of fantastic musicians, and we had the great fortune to have you along at the Whiskey Jar with Miguel Gorodi's Nonet, which was a burning gig.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that gig. That was one of my favourite gigs I've done for quite a long time, actually. It was such a great vibe, and yeah, I really enjoyed that. I was really hoping to come back.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's definitely a highlight for us as well. And of course, yeah, sadly, Ant's gig at the Whiskey Jar was the first one to bite the COVID dust, which was a real shame. Been looking forward to that one for a long while. But having said all that, you like I say, in demand on the scene. But it took you, I'd say, a fair while perhaps to bring out your own debut album. And I was wondering if that was for a specific reason, or just you hadn't got around to it, or you felt time was not yet right.
Yeah, I suppose I felt the time wasn't right, really. I mean, I had lots of projects over the years, and I have been a band leader and written a lot of music and things like that. But I guess it just took me a very long time before I kind of came up with something that I was proud of enough or confident enough in to think, yeah, this is worth recording and putting out there, And I think, I mean, this is going to sound like this is a huge generalization, and some incredible debut albums from some really talented people, but I think maybe some people rush into doing that quite quickly. You see people kind of coming straight out of music college, and within a year the kind of first album's out, and sometimes that can be great, but for a lot of people, maybe they're still finding their voice, and they're still there's a lot to learn. I mean, I was not in any way the finished product when I came out of college and the first few years on the scene, and I was playing with a lot of people, and I did things like playing with I've got my little Round Trip plug up there. Did things like Round Trip CD that was with Richard Turner, and stuff like that. So I was playing and recording and doing stuff that I, some of which I think it was good, but like I don't think my own projects were really sort of fully formed at that stage, and I was trying a lot of different things on. And I think when you're a young musician, maybe you sort of get really heavily into something, and you think, yeah, this is the greatest thing. I've just discovered Tim Byrne or something, and you create a sort of Tim Byrne, the poor man's Tim Byrne tribute band, and then 2 weeks later you get really into Kurt Rosenwinkel, and then you bring out the Kurt Rosenwinkel tribute band and whatever. And it takes a while before you find something that's a bit more honestly your own, and something that's and I think I was always very kind of aware of that when I brought my own when I did do projects and gigs, and I knew that it wasn't quite there yet, really, so it didn't feel right to record it. But then when I did this, my first record, it was a septet album,
4-reed Frontline, which is hefty.
Indeed, yeah.
You've got it up behind you.
I do, yeah.
Down for a little. You could show it to the camera. Why not?
My wife put these up there. She's you've got to put the plugs up there. Little Easter eggs. But there you go. That was my first record, Scratch and Sift. That was called.
Who did the artwork for it?
Alban Lowe did the artwork. So he did. This came out on Two Rivers Records, which is now defunct record label. But at the time, it was this Alia Al Sultani was running this record label. She's kind of still doing musical things, but she's moved away from jazz a little bit now. But she brought out loads of records on this label, and I think she had a lot. Alban did the artwork for quite a few of them, so he was kind of a bit like, not quite, I wouldn't say the in-house artist, but he did quite a few. They're great, I think. Really, some really strong ones. I actually really like, my favorite bit that he did is this this picture on the inside cover, which maybe a lot of people won't have noticed. But
fantastic! That's brilliant.
I really like that. It was just really, really weird. But, yeah. So and I can't remember what I was saying about that really. But yeah, no, we did. I wrote this septet music, and it was, yeah. I just thought, yeah, finally got something that I kind of can stand by and be proud of. So yeah,
well, it's a lot of fun. It's a great album. I enjoyed listening through to it again. Just earlier on this afternoon. It was a pleasure. And so what made you want to put four reeds in the front line?
Well, it was fun to arrange for, I suppose. So I kind of, I think I had a bit of a realization of that when you're kind of writing for a lineup of instruments, it's quite hard to kind of get out of the cliches of that you, or the kind of the things that you expect to hear for that lineup. So when you're writing, if you're writing for like a quartet, you end up, it's really easy to end up writing all the same things you've heard before. So you write things that sound a bit like Coltrane and things that sound a bit like, you know, just whatever, you know, anything Joe Henderson, whatever. But like, so I kind of thought, well, and I was struggling with that, you know, I just felt like everything was a bit of an impression of something. So I thought, well, if I put together something that's kind of unusual, then it's going to force me to write things that, you know, it's going to force me to kind of solve some of those problems. And then maybe that will come out, maybe it'll sound different, you know. And I could have, I guess, had a slightly more wide-ranging front line of, you know, maybe trombones and trumpets and whatever. But I guess I know the saxophone better than those instruments, and I just thought it might be fun. And I kind of toyed with a few different ideas. I thought about writing for saxophone quartet at one point, and I thought, well, this is kind of a bit like a saxophone quartet, but with rhythm section, but it's not really, because it's got the vibes in there as well. And it's like bass, so it's bass clarinet, 2 tenors, and then me on alto. So it's not quite a saxophone quartet, you know, it's not baritone, there's no soprano in there. So I guess I was trying to avoid a lineup that had a huge weight of kind of, well, it's partly that thing of writing all the cliches, and it's partly that thing of just the weight of history sitting on your shoulders all the time. You know, if you're kind of like, you've got all this incredible music, you know, that people have written in the past, or if I'd put together another, you know, I mean, there's things like Andrew Hill, you know, who wrote for kind of really great kind of sextets and septets, or, you know, all the different nonets, whatever, like, and there's just all that history, you know, so it's kind of nice to be able to escape the shadow of that a little bit and just kind of be like, I'm going to carve my own little thing here so I can do something different.
Yeah, brilliant.
Not to say that you ever escape those things, but yeah. No, it was really fun to write for, actually.
Yeah. With this particular podcast, I decided to change tact slightly. The last few have all been fairly heavily biographical, I think, and I wanted to delve a bit more with a few slightly more musical things. But so the first bit of that I wanted to delve into is who are the 3 musicians who you would say have had the biggest impact on your own musical voice, for want of a better way of phrasing that?
Well, I guess, I mean, I'll just start, I'll say some people and we'll see how many they are. But I mean, I suppose the only jazz musician that I had, so when I was getting really into jazz, before I really had even listened to very much jazz, I was playing sort of Charlie Parker transcriptions on the alto saxophone. And I think that's the thing that kind of, that was my first exposure to the kind of language of jazz, and the kind of the syntax of it, and the way that you can construct these lines and phrases. And obviously, being an alto saxophone player, playing his notes on his instrument, they fit really beautifully under your fingers. You know, they're really like fun to play, and they flow in a really nice way. They feel really comfortable, and so I suppose like that was my first. That was the thing that kind of opened that, it kind of unlocked that thing in my head of thinking like, okay, I can sort of do this, you know. And at the time I probably thought everything I was playing was just as great as Charlie Parker. And then you figure out later on that how much you don't understand, but but yeah, I think I was playing those transcriptions and then just going like, yeah, I can do this. And just kind of, so that was probably, that's a huge influence. And I've come back, I mean, that's such an obvious answer, isn't it? Charlie Parker. I mean, you find a jazz musician who hasn't been influenced by Charlie Parker, that would be a challenge. But
I feel we should also draw attention to his centenary this week, wasn't
it? That's right.
Yeah, this week just gone. And that seems a bit bizarre to me to think that was 100 years ago already.
Yeah.
And, you know, 80 years ago since, I suppose, he did his first few major recordings and whatever. You know, seems an extraordinary amount of time.
It's crazy. You think about those kind of some of those really iconic records like Coco and the kind of early ones that are still real kind of like, you know, the center of his kind of you know, the legacy that he left. And that's kind of, it's just after the end of the Second World War. You know, it's like it's mid-40s. It's just insane. You know, I kind of listen to that. It still sounds so modern, that music. It's got such a you know, life in it still, and the amount of energy in it, and the way that they're playing is absolutely like it's wild. You know, they're really kind of there's nothing. I just suppose you have this conception of, you know, thinking back in the past, and it must have been everyone was a bit straight-jacketed and sort of whatever, you know. It's not like that at all. It's crazy music. It's absolutely mad. And I'm trying to think about, that was, my grandparents were young then, you know. It's such a long time ago, but it hasn't aged a day, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I still come back to Charlie Parker all the time, and if I'm ever short of something to practice, you can always just listen to some Charlie Parker and find an absolutely incredible phrase to take down, or, you know, something to work on. It's just such a source of inspiration and just, yeah, incredible music. So yeah, I'd have to, that's got to be one, I suppose. I'm worried that some of the, if I keep answering this question, I think it's just going to be one obvious. I don't think I'm going to have any unexpected answers, really. But like, Coltrane is another one. I mean, you can't escape Coltrane's influence, and I'm sort of thinking about the things that I think about, because you wanted musical answers, I suppose. So I'm thinking about the things that have given me the most food for thought in terms of kind of practicing and composing and just studying the music and inspiration in that way, as well as like just listening and you know, just, I mean, I'd listen to the music for fun as well, but like those two, Charlie Parker and Coltrane, are ones that I come back to just over and over and over again, and I'm still uncovering layers in there and uncovering new ideas and listening to them. You know, you listen to something absolutely to death, and then you come back to it a couple of years later and listen to it and again, and then you're just like, well, I didn't even scratch the surface last time. You know, there's just so much in there, so much. I'm still kind of, I've been sort of gradually over the years working my way through Coltrane's Sound, that album, and just transcribing various things from that record and taking them down and learning those compositions. And I still play, I mean, 26-2 is something that I play just, I don't know, every time I practice, more or less, because it's just so great to play, and it's a great warm up. It's a great thing to stretch yourself on. It gets your fingers working around all, you know, you have to play in so many different keys, you know, there's so many different ways to approach it. It's endless, you know, this kind of, I still can't believe, again, you know, listen to Coltrane playing on those things, and to think that not only is the way that he plays is just unbelievably free and unbelievably inspired musically, and yet he sort of invented this whole the whole structure around it as well. You know, it's an unbelievable achievement. So that blows my mind every time that I think about it. So that's two. That's two. That's two out of three. Yeah, one more. I guess in more recent years, I've listened a lot to like, I'll give you a few names rather than one, but the people that I've sort of listened to since, you know, as a sort of professional musician, thinking of, you know, listening to kind of other saxophone players or musicians and being inspired. The things that I sort of come back to over and over again for inspiration is like, so as a saxophone player, I come back to Joe Lovano all the time. Like I listen to Joe Lovano. For me, is like, represents a sort of kind of a bit of a pinnacle of saxophone playing, in that he's kind of like, he's got everything that I would aspire to as a saxophone player. So just incredible mastery of the instrument, but a really personal language, really kind of, you know, all of the technical stuff is in place. But the way that he plays is kind of like completely and utterly informed by the tradition. He can play on anything, and yet he's completely and utterly himself, and you recognize him within a few notes, you know. And I just feel like he's someone who's like not boxed in by anything. He's kind of, he transcends all the limitations. So, and he doesn't play quavers even, you know. Sometimes he plays quavers, but sometimes he plays these like really long, stretchy sort of things that don't seem to have any kind of relation to the pulse, and yet he always manages to land in the right place. And just like, there's something magic about that. So I come back to him all the time. And thinking about the band that I've put together recently, the things that I've listened to a lot was like Steve Coleman and Django Bates. I think I listen to whenever I get stuck on composing, whenever I need to push through my writer's block, I always listen to Deerhoof, which I don't know if I've come across, but yeah, Deerhoof is for composing for me is like, I don't think any of my music sounds like Deerhoof, but I get a lot of inspiration from them.
Brilliant. Well, that feels like a perfect place to delve into the first track, I think, that you out for us. So, this is called Friday the 13th. Can you tell us a little bit about the track and a little bit about the gig it's taken from?
Yeah, so this was from the Vortex last summer, when we were still allowed to do gigs. And so it's Ivo Neem on piano, Tom Farmer on bass, John Scott on drums. There's two tracks actually that I think going to hear in this podcast, and they're both kind of they both come from this. They're sort of from a set of. I would almost think of them as kind of studies in a particular kind of rhythmic thing that I was working on when I put this music together, and this is kind of why I put this band together. If anyone wants to know more about that, I'm very happy to answer that, but I'll maybe save that for another time, because we could get into
possibly a bit
rhythmic theory lesson. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, anyway, they were kind of based on a particular rhythmic concept, and I wrote them all around the same kind of time. And
is it on the new album? Sorry, it
is on the new album. Yeah. So this is kind of both of the tracks that you're about to hear are on the new album. Yeah, maybe I might talk about this. Well, yeah, maybe you should play it and we'll see. Anyway.
Well, here's Friday the 13th. Enjoy. Great. That was Friday the 13th. You sounded like you had a few more things you might want to say about that track.
Well, I guess they're, like I was saying, they're all kind of these. There's a handful of these tunes that came from a particular place, and sort of so that I was when I teach. So I went on a sort of a trip with some teenagers, which I've been doing the last few summers. We didn't do it this summer, obviously, but sort of 2 years ago, I was on a bus in Germany with like 50 teenagers, and I kind of so in order, that's as you can imagine, that's quite intense and not very peaceful. So I was kind of like to keep myself occupied, I started working on all of these polyrhythms, and I kind of I had my iPad, I programmed all these rhythms into my iPad, and there was just a couple of them in particular that really seemed to, like, when you just kind of, it's like lifting a stone and you just suddenly find like a whole ecosystem underneath. So I kind of like I put these two rhythms together, and I started learning it, and I learned it hearing it this way, and I learned it hearing it that way, and I learned it, I was like, okay, leave that bit out, leave this bit out, see what that sounds like, do it slow, do it fast, and kind of trying to like really get into it, because I had all this time on this trip. We were doing these like 6 or 7 hour journeys on this trip, and I was just plugged into my headphones and tapping all these rhythms out. So after a week of that, I was quite deep into these rhythms, and I'd kind of really absorbed them in quite a deep way. And I think sometimes one of the things I was saying previously about some of my other projects that I've done over the years that I wasn't so happy with, and I think one of the things one of the problems probably there, and with some other kind of contemporary jazz, is the fact that we tend to I feel like we're very rich in ideas. There's no shortage of ideas, and people are very ambitious about their compositions, and they say, that I'm going to write something really complicated. It's going to be in 17/8, and it's going to have a bar of 11/8 at the end of the form, and then it's going to, like, all the chords are going to be like massive crunchy voicings with, where you can only play one really specific mode on every 3 beats, or, and it's very, very complex, and there's not a lot of time in the world for actually like getting properly under the skin of that kind of music. Like, the amount of time and work that it takes to really master those things is just, most people don't have that much time. And especially if you're in a lot of different bands, like most of us, you might have 5 different band leaders giving you those kind of sheets to deal with, and you can't do it. I mean, it's just impossible. There aren't enough hours in the day. So, but I got really into these rhythms, and because I had all of this time, I kind of like got really under the skin of like what I thought. Okay, I kind of thought to myself, well, I wonder what happens if I just stick to this one rhythm. So it was like, again, I'm not going to say exactly what it is, because it's maybe more fun for people to try and figure it out if they're that way inclined, and if they're not that way inclined, it's probably more fun for them just to listen to it and not care about that kind of stuff. But like, if anyone wants to know, they can get in touch. But I kind of wrote, so I've got 3. Is it 3 or even 4? I've got a few pieces, and I've got a whole load of them on my computer of sort of unfinished ones as well that I wrote just based on this one kind of particular polyrhythm, and exploring it from all these different directions. And I kind of, the thought, I guess, that I had, well, I was kind of really inspired by listening to like Steve Coleman, and Steve Coleman strikes me as someone who is very, very single-mindedly focused on one particular type of music making. So he's the complete musician, Steve Coleman. He's incredible, and he would sound amazing on anything. But like, all of his own bands are very focused on these kind of, it's not quite the same thing that I was doing. I haven't borrowed his concept particularly, but like, it's another polyrhythmic kind of approach to music making. But like, he just kind of like, he's developed a whole world around this one particular thing, and everyone who plays in his bands, I'm some of this stuff is stuff that I imagine is what goes on. Maybe it's wrong, but like, I think he kind of like works for quite a long time with musicians before he can play with them, because he has to sort of teach them this whole concept, and they have to like spend a long time mastering, hearing all these different things at the same time, and this kind of really complicated approach to music making. But it's so rich because he's devoted decades to this one particular concept. He didn't kind of at the beginning of his career go like, oh, I'm going to make a polyrhythmic album. Oh yeah, but now I've done that. Now I'm going to make a free album. I've done that now. Now I'm going to do a standards album. He was just like, I'm going to spend my career doing this thing, and I'm going to get really, really good at it. And I'm going to keep going down further and further down the rabbit hole and see what's down there, you know, because most people never get past the entrance, you know, they just kind of scratching the surface really of all of these things. So I suppose when I was writing this music, there was a part of me that was thinking, well, what would happen if I just learned this rhythm really, really well, and then just kind of saw where it went. And I stuck with it for a couple of years really, and I'm still writing things based on this one particular thing. So a lot of the music's got a kind of rhythmic fingerprint to it because it's based on this one thing. So there are kind of certain, when people finally listen to the record, and actually the 2 tracks which we're going to hear on this are both based on that. So you might hear certain kind of rhythmic ideas that are in common between both of the tunes because they're kind of coming from this same place. So there's a bit of that's the ramble basically. That's but yeah, brilliant. It kind of there's a concept.
Yeah. So it's a concept album. There you go.
In a way, it's a concept album. Yeah.
Great stuff. So listen, that sort of leads into my next thing to ask you a bit, which is, what is the most useful thing you've ever spent your time doing within music?
Well, I mean, I suppose that just listening to loads of music probably is the answer to that. I mean, ultimately, you know, I have spent a very, very long time listening to music and like really listening as well. And I think, you know, I don't have as much time as I used to have for kind of just digging into records for like hours and hours. But certainly when I was younger, you know, I just used to just listen all the time, you know, 24 hours a day, or, you know, 16 hours a day, and the rest of the time I was asleep, you know, and just really getting like picking an album and listening to it to the point where you could sing the saxophone parts and the bass parts and the drum parts and the piano parts, and you knew every note of that record. And yeah, that's the only way really to develop as a musician, and that's I don't think that can be peculiar to jazz at all. That must be the same for anyone who wants to get into any style. You just have to absolutely let it seep into your pores, and there's very little that is as valuable as that time spent doing that, I think, and making sure that you're really doing that, not just kind of like putting it on in the background.
Yeah,
you know. Yeah, that's the answer to that. I mean, there's lots of things that I've practiced and things like that, but in the end, I think you're just a sum of what you've listened to as a musician.
So the new quartet with Ivo, Tom, and John. Obviously the tour was cancelled, but you'd already had a few gigs round about, and so I'm great that was able to come together for the album now. What are the plans coming up with that then? Do you have any dates in the diary at the moment?
There's nothing. No, I mean there's nothing in you know, it's just the usual, the COVID situation. There's nothing in the diary. There's a couple of places that I've promised us gigs when they're up and running again. So hopefully
you can add us to the list. We'll definitely have
Brilliant.
you.
I'd absolutely love to have come up. That would be amazing. Yeah. And yeah, I think that, you know, I think we should have something at Ronnie's at some point and things like that, things that were cancelled. So yeah, but there's nothing in the diary at the moment. And then we're going to be trying to get this record out and trying to keep things going. I'm going to try and keep the kind of output ticking over in the meantime, so that we're not just kind of sitting around waiting for other people to invite us to do things, because we don't know how long that's going to be. And I imagine that a lot of places have probably got a bit of a queue now for gigs, so we'll be joining the queue. But we've got definitely going to try and kind of keep things trickling out over the next months, or, you know, however long we have to until we get things going again. So yeah, we look at doing some videos and things like that.
Great. Yeah, we'll make sure we'll give them a share when they're out and about. So tell us a little bit then about this other tune that you've picked out, Coach Trip. This is a fundraiser for the Vortex, isn't it? And do you want to expand and elaborate on all of that for us, please?
So it's called Coach Trip, which is after the Coach Trip that I was talking about earlier. So and it's the same band, and it's another one of my rhythmic studies, I guess. But I put this out earlier on. We recorded this because I didn't think we were going to be recording an album this year, so we did a sort of DIY recording. This is a video that we made in Ivo's house in his front room, So it's a bit of a kind of DIY one, this one. But so I had this video, we recorded this in, I think it must have been about February. So it was just before, maybe January, but anyway, it was just before the kind of everything shut down. So by the time we were kind of ready to put this out, there were no gigs. And the Vortex is just the best jazz venue in the country. Just one of my favorite places for music.
For Manchester.
Except for Manchester. Well, for me personally, I'll say it, let me put it that way. I've played at the Vortex, you know, I mean, I've been playing at the Vortex for about probably 15 years or so, more than that maybe. It's somewhere that's always willing to give new bands a chance. You know, they're always like, they've got new music and like creative, cutting edge, new music happening, you know, 7 days a week, which is just unheard of. You know, where else can you get that in this country of all places? So it's such an important place. It's such an important breeding ground for new music and for jazz, and it has been for a really long time. And they are currently shut and have just eye-watering overheads in their location in East London, and it's just keeping their head above water. I mean, we've all got our fingers crossed for them, basically, that they make it out of everything and get reopened again. So they've been doing a lot of fundraising, and a lot of musicians have been contributing things. I saw Rick Simpson, legendary piano player Rick Simpson, did a 6-hour live streaming marathon yesterday.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So that's quite a feat. That so well done, Rick. That's amazing. But so people are doing all kinds of things, to try and get attention and money to the Vortex, and they have raised quite a bit of money, but they need more and more. You know, their overheads are something like 20 grand a month or something. It's just like absolutely unbelievable. So so I put this out and I'm selling it, so you can watch the video. We'll show you the video, and it's the video's on YouTube and stuff as well. But if you like it and you want to support the Vortex, go to my Bandcamp page and you can buy the track. It's a small amount of money, but if you can afford to, you can pay a bit more, and every penny that I get will go straight to the Vortex. I'm not taking anything from it, and it's the best cause if you're if you love jazz and new music and improvised music. It's essential place. Well,
sit back and have a listen, and then head over to Bandcamp. Follow the link below. This is Coach Trip. Enjoy. Okay, great. That was Coach Trip. Go and check it out. Head over to Bandcamp. So, what do the coming months look like for you in the cloud of uncertainty and the haze and all the rest? What are the certainties? What are you hoping for? What are you trying to put in motion?
Well, I'll be trying to finish off this record, obviously, and get this mixed and mastered onto the next stage, which will take a little bit of time. I'll be doing back to teaching September now. So, I do quite a bit of, I've been teaching on Zoom all the way through all of this. Might possibly actually be going back in person at some point. We'll see. But but other than that, it's very difficult to say, isn't it? Nobody really knows what the next few months are going to look like. But I think I do have actually one gig in the diary, which is, I can't wait. That's with Anne Law's band in, I think it's in Shrewsbury in October. So gonna actually have a gig, fingers crossed. That's all we can say, really. I think we're all in the same boat with this, aren't we? Where like whatever best laid plans I might make could all be subject to change. So we'll see. But if I get this record kind of all finished off by the end of the year, I think I'll be pretty happy with that.
One last thing then. There was one other track you did during lockdown, another fundraising thing for Help Musicians UK. Would you like to tell us a bit about that, and we'll round things up with a listen to that?
So this is an older tune. This is actually from my first album, and it's called Grateful Lady. So it was I actually originally wrote it for quartet, and then adapted it for septet for my record, and then I've adapted it back from the septet version back to quartet again for this version. It was, so I got asked to contribute a track to this album. The album's called Musicians for Musicians, Many Voices on a Theme of Isolation. And you can buy it on Bandcamp and the usual places. And it's raising money for Help Musicians UK, who are an amazing charity, and a lot of musicians have been bailed out by them over the years. Certainly at the moment, a lot of people have been helped out in the current situation where a lot of musicians are not able to work. And there's just such a great organization. They're so positive and just really want to help and passionate about music and musicians. And I've been I haven't relied on them for quite a long time, but there was a point a few years ago where I had a health issue, which meant I couldn't play. And they were just so amazing. Like, I just got not enough positive things to say about them. And if they hadn't come along, I probably wouldn't be a professional musician anymore. I'd have been bankrupt basically. So they're an incredible charity, and the album is really interesting and really great actually, and it's got tracks from classical musicians, from electronic musicians, from pop bands, folk bands, obviously jazz. We're representing the jazz contingent on this one. But it's lots and lots of people, and everything has been recorded for this. Some people have written new music and written new compositions. Other people have recorded kind of lockdown versions of older things. With my quartet, we recorded we all recorded our parts remotely and then put them together to make this. And the video is a little bit lo-fi, so sorry about that. But the music's good, hopefully. And so again, if you like this, I really strongly suggest that you go and check out that record. And it's another really worthy cause.
Brilliant. Well, I'd just like to echo almost exactly what you said about Help Musicians. They've been exceptionally helpful and supportive for me in the past and at the moment as well. So, can't recommend them as a worthy enough cause to anyone watching who's in a position to be able to support. So, please go and check that out. I'll say thank you very much for joining us, and keep well, and we'll see you soon. And here's Grateful Lady. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Bye. again, big thanks to Mike for his time. It was an absolute pleasure chatting to him. Please do go and check out the links below, and if you're in a position to do so, please do join in the fundraising. Mike's done a great job and put a lot of time into putting those things together, so please do go and check those out. Please go and check our Patreon out, patreon.com/NQJazz, and we hope to see you soon for the next podcast. Take care. Bye bye.